a good thing too. Y'all, one of the main differences for you to realize in respiratory problems and cardiovascular, this is what you need to realize right now. In cardiovascular problems, it's the silent killer. It's silent. If you have a respiratory problem and you can't breathe, you know it. If you're struggling to breathe, like a child with asthma, I read this book on Theodore Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt, when he was a young little boy, he had a tremendous asthmatic problem. And he had a goal in mind when he got to the little bit of 10, 11, or 12 to make his body good. And he went to a gym, he worked out, Theodore Roosevelt did. He was a worker, he worked out. And he finally overcame his asthmatic problems and became, you know, the San Juan, the Rough Rider, and all this business. He was became very much an outdoorsman. But he had to overcome this asthmatic problem. He did overcome it. He did overcome his asthmatic problem. All right, but anyway, everybody, right here, maintain within the narrow limits. Okay, this is just intracellular. ICF is within the cells, intracellular fluid. Now, so much for that. Now then, so much for that. All right, now I want to show you something right here. Now listen to this right. We're going to talk about, this is an old book. It's even coming apart. And the chapter in this old book, I use it many years, it says right here, the blood and the lymph. The blood and the lymph. Now, right here it says, now let me make it. Blood is a connective tissue with a complex liquid intercellular material, the plasma. You already know that. In which cells or cell-like structures are suspended. What are the cells or cell-like structures? That would be red blood cells and white blood cells, and what's a cell-like structure? Platelet. All right. They're suspended. And they're called the formed elements. You already know that, don't you? You remember that, Colin? You remember the word formed elements? All right. All right. And then it says, furthermore, plasma is an extracellular fluid, the one contained within blood vessels. Blood comprises about 7% of the body weight, and in about 154-pound male, about 5 to 6 liters. Now, you can remember, if someone were to ask you, how much blood do you have in your body? The general rounded off figure is about 5.4 liters. Right at 5 quarts or a little more. Like, if you ever changed oil in one of those old cars that had 5 quarts of oil, that's 5 quarts. If you dump 5 quarts of oil out on the ground, that'd be a big mess, wouldn't it? That'd be a heck of a mess, wouldn't it? If you dumped it right on the ground. That's about how much blood you've got in your body. All right, so this is, and then it goes ahead and says, the average female adult has about 5 liters of blood, and so forth. And then it says, of course, as you know, lymph is formed by filtration of the blood. Okay, we'll talk about that. It was originally interstitial fluid or tissue fluid. When it enters the lymph vessels, it may properly be called lymph. Now, right here, one thing that I like to mention to you right here, development of the blood. Development of blood. You see this little diagram at the bottom? That represents an extraembryonic mesoderm of the yolk sac. That's extraembryonic mesoderm in the embryo. These things right here are called blood islands. Little blood islands. And essentially what happens, the blood island is made up of what's called angioblast cells. And these angioblast cells form little islands with an opening in there. And then the lining of that opening right there, that's going to be the endothelium. That will become the endothelium. And now let me just mention this to you real quickly. All right, it says right here. Development of blood and blood vessels, angiogenesis, occurs simultaneously. Listen to this, you moms. Beginning at 15 to 16 days of embryonic development. Now let me ask you this. Why would you think early development of blood and blood vessels is necessary in a human baby? Why do you think about it, why do you think early development of blood and blood vessels is important in a human baby? Think. Why would it be important? Or, okay, if you had a baby, was your baby living off of the yolk of an egg? How does your baby get its nourishment? The umbilical cord, right? The umbilical artery. Where does the umbilical artery come from? It comes from your body, doesn't it? And what happens at the umbilical level? Then that nourishment diffuses across and is picked up by the blood vessel, by the forming blood vessels. We are placental mammals. Y'all remember this term? Y'all remember this term from somewhere down the line? We are viviparous. Okay, look at this, y'all. You remember this one? viviparous. Y'all remember that term when I mentioned it in 2401? Viviparous. A viviparous is a placental mammal. You remember that, James? Oviparous, O-V-I-P-A-R-O-U-S. That's an egg layer. That's a chicken. Okay? It's a goose. Alright, ovoviviparous, O-V-O-V-I-V-I-P-A-R-O-U-S. Ovoviviparous, that's like some sharks, and maybe some other animals, I don't know all of those, but some sharks will have eggs inside their bodies, and the young will develop, and then the egg breaks, the young feed off the yolk in that egg inside the mother's body, and the time they're supposed to be, quote, born, if you want to use that term, the egg, it breaks, and the little sharks come out swimming. That's an ovoviviparous. I mentioned that to y'all one time, didn't it? Was it this semester or in 2401? Huh? Did I mention it in this class? I didn't remember if I mentioned it. Did y'all remember me mentioning it? But just very briefly. All right, but embryonic formation of the blood. All right, let me show you this real quickly. Angiogenesis. If you have an angiogram, okay? An angio, look. If I have an angiogram and they make an incision right here, and they insert a tube in there, and they inject some stuff, and they go up through this vessel, the iliac, and go up this way and insert some stuff into my heart, and they take pictures of it then, and they have this stuff, this radioactive stuff, they take pictures of my heart, they're going to say, okay, what's the tissue look like, what does the muscle look like in the wall of the left ventricle, alright, what are the vessels like, are they open, do I have any problems, do I have any plaque buildup in the vessels? Alright, and they do that, and they check that out. They do an echocardiogram. Okay, does this guy have AFib? Is there a little bit of mess up? You can live with AFib. You can live. We'll talk about all that. You can live with AFib, and this is where they prescribe Coumadin many times, and we'll tell you why in a minute, later. But the AFib is like you cannot live with VFib. You can't live with VFib. With VFib, there's no cardiac output. That's where the shock comes in. All right. So angiogenesis, development of blood and blood vessels. And it occurs simultaneously in the beginning of about 15 or 16 days. And I'm just going to kind of briefly hit on this. Early development, and here it is, y'all. Early development is necessary to human because the human zygote contains very little yolk. The fertilized egg or zygote has all of you remembered that term, didn't you? Zygote, the fertilized egg. All right, it contains very little yolk to contain development. And there's a need to bring nutrients and oxygen from the what? The placenta. Now, y'all don't know this yet, but you're going to learn it. What forms most of the placenta? Is it chorion or amnion? Chorion. A chorion. You remember what the chorion is? You remember that one? There are 4 extra-embryonic membranes. Extra-embryonic membranes outside the embryo. One is the chorion, one's the amnion. You can relate to the amnion. You've heard of amniotic fluid. Chorion, amnion, yolk sac, and allantois. The allantois is involved in a major early blood vessel in the placenta, which we'll talk about that later. But the chorion forms the major part of the placenta. The major part. It actually begins to produce a hormone called the human chorionic gonadotropin. That's how you can tell if you're pregnant. You know what a pregnancy test is? And when you do if you do a pregnancy test, you know what that's telling you? Within a week after a missed period, within a week after that, then there will be a color change. There will be a color change in a pregnancy test due to human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG. You didn't realize that.